Welcome everyone to another episode of Transform 360, where we dive into conversations that inspire, educate, and empower us. I am your host, Sabar Shad, pharmacist, mental health advocate, and your guide to personalized well-being. Before we begin, please be advised this episode may touch on sensitive themes that could be emotionally challenging for some listeners. Feel free to pause or walk away if anything feels overwhelming for you. Also, a quick disclaimer: the views and perspectives shared in this conversation are my own, and I do not represent any organizations or institutions I am affiliated with. Today, I'm honored to welcome Clarena Tobon, a heartfelt leader, a dedicated advocate, and the driving force for grassroots change and healing. Clarena is an executive director of NAMI Central Texas, where she leads with passion and purpose to support individuals and families who are impacted by mental health conditions. After losing her mom to suicide and experiencing the unique barriers faced by the BIPOC community, which stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color, Clarena has become a fierce advocate for mental health equity. Her work focuses on reducing the stigma, improving access to care, and fostering community-driven solutions for mental health. Clarena, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to kind of have this conversation with you and just see what it can do.
Of course, thank you for being here. So let's jump right in. You work so closely with communities that often carry the heaviest burden, and yet they're frequently left out of a lot of conversations. What do you feel are some of the most overlooked barriers, especially for the marginalized communities, and how can we start breaking them down on an individual level or as a society?
Yeah, this question comes up so often, right? And I think that it comes up often because there's so many barriers actually in place. Unfortunately, I think part of it is accessibility. Right? So we know that since COVID, a lot of things have come up online. We're able to see therapists online, have our appointments. I mean, we can even see our general doctor at this point and just get a quick conversation, 15 minutes, and be done from the comfort of our own home. But I think that there's also a part of that doesn't feel accessible, which is like the human interaction gets lost in that. And when you're having conversations, especially around mental health or trauma or things that have happened in the past, sometimes that human interaction and being in the same space and sharing energy is really important. So I think accessibility has come a long way, yes, but I think that there's also a piece that we're missing in that as well that's kind of broken. And I think the other piece too is the cultural competency part of it, where I can say in my personal experience, that was one of the biggest barriers when my mother was needing the help that could have possibly gotten her further in her journey with mental health. Was I was the translator of a lot of the deepest, darkest things that she was experiencing. A lot of the pain was translated through me to a doctor. And also coming from a different culture in general. We're from Colombia. We're Latinos. We talk about things differently. We experience family a little bit differently. And having that barrier there alone, even if the language might be there, I think that it's a little difficult. So those two, accessibility and that cultural competency, I think are one of the two that highlight the most in my experience of being able to get the help that we need in our communities.
That makes sense. And are there any key points that you would like to highlight? Like, how can we start breaking them down by making maybe some resources available?
Yeah, I think part of it is as individuals in the community. So this goes beyond having to spend money or like put all these pieces or work with governments, educating ourselves as people and understanding how can I empower those around me to seek help? What are the resources? Are they free? Are they on a sliding scale? Do they have bilingual, opportunities for those that maybe need that? I think educating ourselves and understanding what the resources are around us is a huge help. And also how to have the conversation, because having a conversation around mental health can be so scary, especially if we don't know where we are. Like, how do we feel and how can we handle this information? So I think it starts within us, right? How can we show up for our community, for those people around us? How are we having conversations within our family? And then the other piece that I think too that I'd like to highlight is being honest with yourself about those needs too. So, like, it's very easy for us to say, my sister needs this type of help, and I'm going to just kind of help her get that information. But also, what is a reflection of the life that I'm living and the life that I want to live that maybe I can do? Because what better way to tell your community this worked for me, it might work for you. So I think that that's another piece, is not just educating yourself for others, but educating yourself for yourself. Those are the most immediate things that we can do as a community.
That's amazing. And that's such an important insight that you have shared. Most of the people, what I feel when I work with them is don't ask for help. They are looking to get help, or they're just scared of how to ask. They feel that they may be judged. So that's another problem with this.
Absolutely.
And now we'll be starting with, in the honor of the mental health month. In my personal opinion, I hate the mental hate. I know it's a strong word. I
Yeah.
dislike how we frame it. We will probably should have something like we would say heart, stomach, or intestine, something like that. Just say brain health month. For me, it's kind of a more racist word, and that's my opinion on it. So
Yeah.
I want to shift to something that's more personal. Can you share a defining moment in your life that sparked your passion for advocating for mental health, and how that experience has shaped your journey?
Sure. So I think this is obviously, a big part of my journey, my story. In 2007, I lost my mother, my beautiful, amazing, vibrant, light up a room type of person, mother. Her name was Maria. And I lost her to suicide. And I will say that although we had been going through a couple years of some mental health situations that had kind of arisen, we just had never had discussions around mental health. And so it was a real shock to me when we started having to deal with some of these things. And again, the barriers were in place, and the fear and the stigma. And all of a sudden, people weren't coming around anymore. And it felt very lonely. And I think that's what we see often, is when people are dealing with this, sometimes community doesn't know how to come together and gather. And so it feels like a very lonely place to be. And through that, not at any time did I think that I would be in a position where I could say I lost my mother to suicide or she died by suicide. But it happened. It happened. It was a shock. It happened on a Friday. And I remember once I kind of came out of the shock piece of that, I looked for answers everywhere, Saba. I looked for answers everywhere. I have books that I bought. I remember going on the internet. Now, this is 2007, so the internet looked very different for us back then. And I would look for grief groups, and I would go to a grief group, and I realized that in the grief group I didn't quite fit in it, because my grief, I didn't have anything to blame. I blamed myself. I blamed my mother. There wasn't a heart attack, there wasn't a car accident. It doesn't minimize the loss, but it changes it in a way. And I finally found a support group specifically for survivors of suicide loss. And that's where it changed the game. And I think that when I found that, I found this new family, this new community that spoke the language that I needed to hear at that point. And the language was around why. That was the question. And so from there, it just skyrocketed. I went straight into, I need answers. I need to talk to people. I need to keep her name alive. I did advocacy. I went to the Capitol. I went to DC. I was part of a really beautiful documentary about transformational grief. And I think that that's kind of what drove me, is knowing that the woman that she was would have wanted this to be a part of her legacy as well.
That's amazing, and thank you for sharing that. Such an important incident that shaped, I think, who you are today and what you have been doing and uplifting people in our community. So thank you for doing that. And I know it's a little off track, but I would really love to highlight what you said, that you lost your mom to suicide, or she died by suicide. A lot of the times, I think there's so much stigma around that they committed suicide. So that's another thing that, we're just blaming or victimizing the other person for doing it. Don't just label people that they committed, they died by suicide. And I would just like to say, like a small prayer for your mom. May God bless her with peace and serenity and bless her with the highest ranks in heaven. Thank you very much for being here and sharing this because I feel it's very powerful. And as we're talking about it, just giving me goosebumps. So for thank you for sharing that. I'm so grateful, and I hope most of our listeners they can take away something and help someone in the family who may be struggling. And
Yes.
yeah, thank you for
I
that.
appreciate you, Saba, for opening this conversation and for making this on an available platform. Like, this is a part of what we're talking about, where it's accessibility and educating yourself and understanding, like, how can I show up? And you're creating that space for us. So I appreciate you.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying to do whatever I can in my means because someone in my family had the same mental health risk. So whatever little I can do for the community. So for the next segment, I would really like to discuss that we're going into. How do you personally define success and failure in your work, and what have you learned from both?
Yeah, so I think success to me looks like being invited to be in rooms that normally wouldn't have these type of conversations. I would say, we have been really lucky to kind of collaborate with a lot of people in our community, a lot of businesses. So like bookstores have invited us to come in and talk about what we do. I think when someone that is a complete stranger that you meet and you say, "Oh, I work in mental health," or "I work for NAMI," or you mention anything around that, and immediately they're so willing to sit with you and tell you some of their darkest, deepest times of their lives. That vulnerability of open conversation and being honest and raw, that is success to me. That is a part of success to me because we had no idea who we were 30 seconds ago. And now all of a sudden we're sitting here having the deepest, darkest, meaningful conversation. And I say dark because that's the reality. Like sometimes it is sad and hard and traumatic, but you're sharing it and you're getting it out of your system in the sense of like being able to talk about it in a safe space. And so I think that those are moments for me where I leave and I'm like, my day could have been super hectic. I might have 700 emails waiting for me, but I had a conversation with someone. I don't know when it was the last time that they talked about this. I don't know what rooms they've been invited to have those type of conversations. So I think that collaboration piece and then that open, safe space of sharing is success. I think failure to me, I'd almost redefine it, not so much in failure, but opportunity.
Mm.
Maybe we as NAMI Central Texas weren't able to show up somewhere in the way that we could have. Maybe we didn't have the right volunteers. Maybe the conversation wasn't properly invited or properly held. I think it's an opportunity to go back and reflect and say, how could we have made this event a little bit more leaning into this situation or getting that feedback from the community. So we do surveys after most events. And if we see feedback that it looks negative or looks like a failure, it's not a conversation of like, we didn't do it right. Because we did it with what we knew we had in front of us at that moment. What we could do is change it or look at it and identify how we could do something different. So I wouldn't call it so much of a failure as much as just a learning opportunity. I would also say when I see communities, our communities of color, BIPOC, communities that deserve to have the voice elevated when it comes to mental health because culturally we may not even have these discussions or it may be something that we just don't ever bring to the table. I think another part of that is continuously seeing that systematic oppression thrown on there and that's genuinely just heartbreaking, but that's why we exist. That's why the work that we do and these conversations are so beneficial. And so yeah, I think that's my answer to that.
Okay, I agree. Then thank you for sharing all of that. And I love how you redefine failure as opportunities because I know to even acknowledge that failure is an opportunity, you need a certain mindset. And thanks for highlighting it for us and all of our listeners that failures are opportunities that should be used as a stepping stone to learn. And I know many of our listeners may feel isolated or unsure of where to begin, like most of us. So, especially if they're struggling silently and they don't have someone, a family member they trust, or whatever they're going through in their life. For those who might be feeling isolated and unsure where to start on the mental health journey, what hopeful message would you share with them to inspire healing?
I know this is not going to sound super hopeful because you're sort of like, I'm not happy that I'm not alone, but you're not alone. This journey has been in so many people's lives. We don't talk about it enough, which is why I try to talk about it at every corner that I can.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not alone. And in saying that, there's a lot of people that either have been through this journey, not the exact same one, but have been through a similar journey and are trying to identify where to get the help. And so the help is out there too. Part of that is NAMI Central Texas, NAMI affiliates all over the country. All our services are free. They're virtual, they're in person. You can get support groups, you can do education, whatever it is that you kind of want to take a bite out of first, and then maybe see where the journey kind of takes you, because not everyone's journey is going to look alike. And also, I think the other thing that I had no idea about until I got into this field is the different modalities of therapy.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to sit by a therapist and just have a conversation. There's so many different things. There's art, there's music, there's equine therapy. You get to hang out with horses and like really identify what's going on in your body. I mean, there's so many modalities. So number one is you're not alone in that. It may not sound fantastic because you can think of all the things that are happening with other people who are dealing with their own mental health condition or being a caregiver to someone that lives with a mental health condition. But because of that, there are roadmaps that are constantly being made to try to find success, to find that help. So reach out, get educated for yourself, for others, and know that there's so many modalities of what therapy can be. It doesn't have to be therapy to be therapeutic.
Yeah.
That's important. So I think that's what I would leave it with.
That's beautiful. And you mentioned about different resources that are free. So if someone wants to get more information, they can go to the website and they would get all the help or resources that they're looking for, correct?
It would be namicentraltexas.org.
Okay.
But yes, so it's namicentraltx.org. And also there's, if it's a situation where you're like, I just need to talk to someone now, you can call or you can text 741-741. That is the text crisis line. There's also 988, which we know has been something that has kind of been new to us, which is the new crisis line. You can call there as well. And if you know who your local mental health authority, so in Travis County, it's Integral Care. In Williamson County, it's Blue Bonnet. You can reach out to them. They have a plethora of resources. And the thing is, like, it's okay to pause and say, wow, this feels really overwhelming. There's almost too much information out there. I don't know what direction to go. It's okay to pause and take a second and say, what do I really want? What is the purpose? What am I looking for? Am I looking for therapy? Am I looking for connection? Am I looking for just resources, information, education? Because it can be an overwhelming thing to try to find help, especially when you're in the middle of needing it. So let others come to that and kind of guide you. And all those resources that we just mentioned are perfect for that.
That's great. And I love that you shared a beautiful reminder with us that healing is possible and no one has to go through it alone. And thank you very much, Clarena, for your honesty, your passion, and your tireless work that you do every day with so many people to uplift them. And to all our listeners, thank you for joining our Transform 360 podcast. We hope today's conversation just reminded you that healing can come from ground up through community, compassion, and connection. And the best what you can do is just stop judging people and just give them a chance and just listen to what they have to say. We often don't listen and we just prepare the answer in our mind to a question. So please just stop, don't judge them, and just give another person a chance. Just listen. And if you have found value in today's episode, please subscribe, share it with someone who needs it, and leave us a review. And thank you very much, Clarena. I really appreciate all your time, all your insight, and all your hard work. Until next time, take care and stay blessed.
Thank you so much, Saba. Appreciate you as well.